Yep, got it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Sharat, and I'm the host and moderator for today's session. Before I begin, let me go through some of the housekeeping stuff. I have Caleb with me from BlockApps, and Caleb will be managing the chat. So during the course of the webinar, feel free to chip in and ask your questions in the chat window, and I will take them up during the course of the webinar or during the end of the webinar, as and when we'll see how the webinar progresses. And yeah, so let's get this webinar started by talking about how supply chain especially and the provenance and track and trace is getting more noise, or it's getting the right noise, and people are actually looking forward to how blockchain can be utilized for making sure that the provenance and track and trace is utilized, because supply chains across the globe are being broken because of the pandemic. And as far as agriculture is concerned, it always makes sense to know where the food is coming from. To discuss more on this, today I'm joined by Sid. Sid is the Director of Business Development at BlockApps. So Sid, welcome to the webinar, and let's talk about what you're going to discuss as far as the herbicide tracking is concerned.
Yeah, Sharat, thank you very much. And really enjoying having the opportunity to be with you today. Again, my name is Sid Siefken. I'm working with BlockApps with a focus on the agricultural marketplace. This is a space that I'm certainly passionate about, and wanted to really put together a presentation that talks about the practical application of track and trace in this environment. And as noted here, we're looking at utilizing a herbicide as the product that we're tracking, and mainly because in the North American marketplace, right now we're engaged in a lot of post-emerge herbicide applications for weed control and plant protection. And I know there's lots of interest in how new data technologies can improve efficiencies around supply chain and provide a level of visibility that before has always been a little bit challenging to accomplish. And so really that's kind of the high level overview of what we're going to cover today. So as we go forward, I'll go ahead and share with you the kind of the formal agenda. I've got a bit of information that we'll share here on the supply chain management, and really kind of talk about it in practical, generic terms from a supply chain management solution. And then we're going to move on and talk a little bit more specifically about tracking that product through the supply chain. Talk a little bit about some advanced features that I think are interesting to this market segment, and then talk a little bit about some accelerator programs and ways in which you could get started to take advantage of really blockchain technology on your own. So the first thing we really want to do when we look at an enterprise business is really try to identify where you think you'll get the most value, or maybe what your biggest pain point is that you're trying to solve. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind as you get started and are looking at areas of the business. Do you have a need to share multiple pieces of information with multiple parties on an ongoing basis? And I think in supply chain, that answer is yes. The question is how best to accomplish that. In a lot of instances, you got to determine who holds the information, and can all parties have access to that simultaneously? And then is there a need for that information to be verified or some level of audit trail? And thinking through what your system is today. Is there an entrenched system that we would want to mirror or accomplish some additional work through, or is this kind of a new area of the business that could really benefit from having this next level of visibility? So as we think through that, keep those in mind as we work through that. Normally in supply chains, we have some what I would consider traditional standard supply chains where you have each party kind of has their own transactional records. Sometimes it's difficult to verify. Many times you have sometimes inconsistent data formats between parties. Not that they mean to be, it's just the way their IT systems have grown up. You might have the opportunity to want to share information, but there could be some challenges in reconciling and really being able to have that information. The value of the blockchain, if you look on the right side of the slide, is that the single shared ledger of information really improves these efficiencies. So we're looking at this as a single source of truth for that transactional information. Being able to standardize on data formats gives parties access to that information. Being able to see that information in real time with information updates from all parties is a huge value to the solution. And then, of course, the visibility is high, and then we put some options together for data privacy. But if you go back and you think about those things, right, standardization of data and data formats really allow this to get leverage. There may be some front-end work that requires that to take place, but I think the end results pay off long term. When we look at this graphic, a couple of things I wanted to call attention to here. We really have a blockchain ledger, the blue bar in the middle, which we'd really kind of think about as really the highway of information that we're moving through there. And it's the blockchain ledger. In this scenario, this is where the negotiations and smart contracts are exchanged, traded, settled, and ultimately brought to conclusion or retirement. So again, just a feel for how this is laid out. In this solution, smart contracts with some privacy allow us to then start to exchange information between suppliers. And I'm showing you this as generic, which is the creation of a bidding and exchange. You may have supplier A, a supplier B. You may want to have multiple bids from different distributors that are supplying that. And then ultimately, who's going to win the business and be able to put that really product into play. So again, just a way to think about how these transactions are exchanged. Now with blockchain, there's a lot of information to consider and a lot of platform considerations to make around, in this case, a number of things that are important to your business. I'm going to focus on 3 of them today, mainly focusing on the first one being privacy. Do we have that granular data privacy settings and controls? These are things that blockchain can manage. We also have the opportunity to work with the governance models, the detailed control of how networks are governed and how they are utilized so that everybody gets the most value and that the members of the consortium in the process really are looking after and that their privacy is maintained on some governance rules. And then we also think about portability, right? Can you transfer other blockchain applications into your instances? And this is some things we'll talk about later where you may look at a third-party application to build upon your core. You may have this blockchain data moving to other blockchains. So those are things that I think are very important as we look at really blockchains for large-scale production implementation. Couple things on privacy. Wanted to just indicate that if we're able to manage the consortium data flow and visibility through these private chains, it really makes sense to do so. There's a lot of talk about blockchain and generalities, whereby there's some talk about public blockchains versus private. I think for enterprise approach, you certainly want the comfort of private data and private chains. A couple things that are of note here is this can be set up to have unlimited user groups working within the networks, multi-party chains for transactions between groups of 2 or more, the ability to scale easily, being able to port and manage a number of different chains. So when we look at that, you can see that there could be various players within those, inside those networks, right? It could be the RFP bidding chains, it could be invoicing delivery, administrative chains. Please note that there's various buyers and various interests to take into consideration when you're building out the architecture of the supply chain that you're managing and the blockchain tools that you're using to do so. Governance is also a big area where we think that we have some great capabilities. We have the ability to find and edit network members, both manually and automatically, based on predefined rules. Now, I give you this slide because as we go to work it's imperative that we work with our clients to understand what those rules are and how to define those. And then we manage those through a governance contract. So think a smart contract that really manages who participates in the network. And it's a way in which we can automatically add new, be able to perhaps remove members, and do that in a way in which your integrity of the network is in place. And the graphic on the right says, well, we might have a vendor network in 2019 that's expanded in 2020. And we're able to do so without having to go back and re-architect the overall chain. So some good information there around governance and privacy. When we start looking at kind of the next phase, track and trace, herbicide, and smart contracts, a couple things to consider generically are this, what is an asset? What asset can it track? Generically, we define widget as an asset and track and trace, but think of these as a herbicide, a pesticide, a fertilizer, any type of group of products that you would be managing within the supply chain. So you might not only have, quote, a herbicide, but you may have 152 different herbicides that are part of your business, that each of those would be identified. When we look at the identification of those, one of the first things that we look at is how we go about defining what an asset is. And we do that through the smart contract prices. One smart contract template for each asset allows us to have descriptive information about it. In this instance, we've looked at an asset type, which is a herbicide, a least saleable unit of a 2.5 gallon jug. We've incorporated identifiable information here, which is a GTIN number, a UPC code, the producer of the item, an EPA number, and some information about the state, the ownership, and in this case, some pricing information to go with that. So I just give you that to say that as we build these out, we're looking at defining information that describes that particular asset, and then we use that as it extends and moves through the supply chain, and we use that information to track it. When we look at this, we thought one of the things we do in this webinar is just take a look at this overview video that really explains track and trace in 3 minutes from a generic perspective, and I'm going to show you that video at this point.
Track and Trace is a generic asset tracking application that can be installed on a STRATO blockchain network. Track and Trace takes advantage of STRATO's private chains, programmable asset logic, and custom governance controls to create a blockchain-backed asset tracking system, where asset information is kept private between various parties as it advances through its lifecycle. The Track and Trace application comes with 4 distinct roles built in: manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and regulators. All members of the private Track and Trace network can securely log into their account from the web using existing accounts from their company or web services like Google. After logging in, members use the application to create, review, or update the status of a widget asset that passes between these roles. The widget assets in Track and Trace are represented by out-of-the-box smart contracts that facilitate private exchange of an asset between these roles. Let's see the smart contract in action. First, a manufacturer creates an order. This order is visible to distributors, but not retailers. Distributors then review open orders and submit bids to fulfill the order. These bids are only visible to the manufacturer that submitted the order. Manufacturers accept the bid and launch a smart contract to track the order's fulfillment. Once fulfilled, distributors can repeat the process for sales to retailers with the same privacy rules as before. All the while, regulators have visibility into all bids and transactions in real time, severely reducing the cost of compliance for all parties. The data on the blockchain can also be both added and extracted from the network through RESTful APIs that have the same privacy settings as their role, so you can connect existing ERP, logistics, and invoicing systems to fit your needs. The widget asset in Track and Trace, along with the roles and rules of the network, can all be customized to represent the unique exchange of a specific physical good or financial asset in a manner that reflects the actual activity and business rules associated with the asset. If you are struggling to collect reliable information about your business's assets and keep the cost of compliance down, then Track and Trace may be the next generation solution you need. Track and Trace is available for you to try with BlockApps STRATO today. Contact BlockApps for more information or find STRATO on cloud marketplaces.
With that video, we wanted to deep dive a little bit into the specificity from the agricultural perspective. So I'll kind of slow that down a little bit and bring some practicality to it from our perspective. When we look at those four major roles of manufacturers, distributors, retailers, regulators, and we think about it in an ag context, we're really working on how product moves and how product flows throughout that network. The overview is this. We're looking at being able to track from manufacturer to application, being able to create that asset from the manufacturer, give it that unique identifier, place information about that onto the blockchain, and follow that all the way through as both those products are being really recorded, transactions are being negotiated, the exchange and the transfer of ownership is being made. And so to look at that, again, with that unique identifier, we're taking a look at a few things here. The first step here, which is really important, is the manufacturer really has a responsibility to create the asset. And again, that's with that information that we know about the product. It's how we would refer to it internally and how we would want our business partners to also refer to it internally. So you got to give it properties. Those have to be well defined. When you take a look through there, there's also a box down at the bottom, which is kind of the current state really at the manufacturer level. The ownership is still with the manufacturer. A couple things to note here. Blockchains can manage fixed price contracts if you have agreed upon pricing with your business partners. It can also manage an offer and a bid process. So in this example, we're going to look at an offer and a bid process because it's a little bit more interesting from the flexibility that we can show here. But in this case, we put a standard MSRP on the product of $180. When we go and create that, in this particular instance, what we're showing is our STRATO platform adding that information to the record. This is what you would see with your implementation, where you would have a product name, a UPC number, the least sellable unit number, a price, an EPA registration number, manufacturing information, a GTN number. Those are all the things that are important so that when you've created that asset, you can take the next step. And that next step is then to be able to go out and to offer that for sale. When we look at the next step, you have distributors that can individually, bid on that asset. So if I'm a distributor, I know I need some of this product, I can go in and put together what my bid is going to be in an effort to let you know that I'm a willing buyer in this scenario. So within this orange, am represented as a distributor. I've put a bid in for 144 and I've put that out so that you as a manufacturer can see that bid. And if you like my price, you can go ahead and accept that bid. So with this bid was at $144 as the manufacturer, I've accepted that bid. And at that point in time, we're off to transacting that business relationship. We've been able to move that product then that we have clearly identified. And now we know that the state is at distribution and the ownership has passed to that distributor. So again, we've created record of manufacturing, we've created record of bid and acceptance, and then we've also shown the change in the ownership level. So I think a really good way to look at it. Now you say, okay, we made it to one step. What's the next piece in the chain? Well, now as the distributor, I'm looking to service all of my clients that are closer to the farm. And in that instance, we're going to do the same thing here. The exchange process is similar. We've got a product to sell. We've got folks that want to buy it. In this particular instance, we're looking at those assets that we've listed, and we can offer that really on the platform for sale. Then as a retailer comes in, we're able to go in and say, hey, we're going to go ahead and offer a bid on that. We're going to send that over so that the distributor can take a look at it and really be able to then say, okay, now I'm willing to buy that. We're going to create that track, and I'll go ahead and create that ownership. So we accepted that bid at $162 at that point. And so now we've got a record of that product as it's moved through there. And the third step is really contracted and agreed to.
Sid, I have a question here. So this entire bid process and the data flow, is it available to all network participants, all business users, or is it on a need-to-know basis?
Yeah, very good question. I think the important thing here is it's on a need-to-know basis in this realm, that as the manufacturer, if you have invited your business partners as distributors, only they will see the bid and the asset that's being offered. So that information would be, quote, private between the manufacturer and their first line of customers. The retailer wouldn't see what that transaction is. They would be aware that there's assets available, but they wouldn't have information to the private information. Similarly, the manufacturer wouldn't have the same visibility between distributor and retailer, right? That's a private transaction that's taking place. They would say there's information that's agreed to be shared, and those parameters can be set up by the members of the blockchain. So when we look at it, the STRATO platform can help manage that through governance, what available information is visible to all, and what is just confidential between those two parties.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at the next step here, this really becomes, again, what we've stated. We've now moved that product and ownership at the retail level available for application, and the sale is made. So now we're able to go through and have really put that together to conclude kind of that transactional piece that's in play. When we look at that, we bring together what I consider to be the entire value piece, right? And maybe this answers the question a little bit, where on our main chain, you can see that there's information about the product or the asset type that's visible to all. And then there's some private information down here in terms of the state, the ownership, and the price that are only available between parties. So a couple of things to note here. Because this process is being managed on the STRATO platform electronically, those transactions can be conducted and realized in real time. You work with standardized data formatting so that the information flows smoothly through all parties. And you have a high level of transparency of how that particular product has moved through that supply chain. Now, there could be additional information that you would want to add, and that could be a georeference location as well. That can be added to that. Georeference could be GPS coordinates. It could be a physical address of where that end use point is located. But I think that's the thing to understand is there's transparency through that process. And then this record becomes really that single source of truth for all parties. And again, when we look at it, you've got essentially a smart contract, one at property creation through distribution onto the retail location. So again, I think there's some really good data here that really kind of benefits from the visibility and the traceability of that product through that network. I have a few additional ways to look at it, and I think this is some advanced capabilities, but I'll show you this one because it talks about data privacy and track and trace. And this is really what we were speaking to earlier. There's an asset created. There's a private chain A, which is the transaction between the manufacturer and the distributor. There's the retailer and the distributor private chain B. And so there's some information that is available on the private chain that is only available to those parties that interact. Then the main chain has that information where you have all of the information that's visible to all parties. And again, when we look to share this information, that's a great way to do that and to manage the overall inventory. There's opportunities there to really be empowered to know from a inventory control perspective, where's the product sitting? Is it being utilized to its fullest capacity? Certainly, if I'm a distributor, I want to know where demand is. And if I know where demand is moving, you might be able to proactively go out and find additional clients for that product. So you look at that from a track and trace perspective. We've got main chains, we've got private chains, and then we have the overarching view where you may have some regulators that have read-only end-to-end visibility. And that regulation can then provide some comfort to all of the members that all of the participants are, in fact, behaving correctly and the information is flowing smoothly. So think of that regulator as somebody that ensures the overall system performance of your blockchain implementation and the efficiency of the STRATO platform going forward. We can basically take a look at this from where we're at, from the product movement, but also being able to understand where we're at from a reporting perspective and where the final consumption of that product could be located. So I think there's some good things in there that are certainly interesting. We've done an opportunity to look at a use case that has some similarities in regards to this overall process. And one of the success stories here is really around tracking of agricultural supplies and some of the usage. When we look at some of the solution, the outcome, there's really a creation of an overall ecosystem, including an application that allows you to track the status of farm inputs through the life cycle. It's the opportunity to work with unique memberships and features for all participants, for dealers, for auditors, farmers, and ultimately on to processors and buyers of the product. Being able to run that through not only on desktop web interfaces, but also mobile applications as well. Some of the benefits that you're looking at is being able to have the ability to track the life cycle of that product from manufacturing out to use. It provides for a level of, I think, transparency that enables the enhancement for both internal and external auditing, some reporting capabilities, and ultimately putting together an immutable record that we know exactly how our product has been used and consumed in the marketplace. And if you think about that one, if I'm in the distribution business, not only is that important for me in this growing season, but I also want to have this data as part of my business analytic tools. I want to know where demand is. I want to know how perhaps year over year our products have been either growing or contracting, what parts of the marketplace are using which chemistries. And that information can be very beneficial from an analytical perspective. So I think there's some really good information as it relates to really putting that program together. Earlier, we talked about some detailed blockchain solutions, and I wanted to offer this a little bit of a vision into some of the next things that can be in play. We talk a lot about the single product track and trace, but there's also a detailed solution library that we've put together from a BlockApps perspective. Supply chain management is very important, but we also have looked at ways that we can improve the crop insurance efficiencies from the digitalization of the records and the policies that are in place. Similarly with being able to do reporting, land reclamation. We talked a little bit earlier about portability and leveraging a STRATO blockchain platform with some third-party applications. And I wanted to draw your attention to one, which is Trace Food. Trace Food is really a product, a mobile product for food safety and traceability. And so similarly to the principles of tracking input supplies, it can also be able to be leveraged with some additional application from Trace Food that would allow you to track product at the harvest time. And initially, we're focused here on the fresh fruits and vegetable markets. Certainly, we'll be expanding its capability into protein and dairy as we go forward. So there's a couple of things there that I think are very interesting. So think about where you're at with kind of your blockchain journey and what you may want to accomplish, and explore some of these solution libraries that we have for you, and some of those applications that could be beneficial for your organization.
Sid, can you talk more about the fertilizer subsidy payments part? If you can go back to the previous slide.
Yes. So in some of those subsidy payments, right, the USDA often has programs that are in place. This would allow them to more efficiently administrate those programs. And I think specifically, with every new farm bill comes new ways of providing enhancements to growers, some level of compensation for the way in which they're operating their farms. And so if there is the opportunity to go through and put together a payment structure, the blockchain functionality is very appropriate here. In some of our other businesses, from a BlockApps perspective, we've done some work in the financial sector for being able to help with the movements there. And this could be also really applied to the USDA payments that are in place, and being able to allocate those subsidies so that they can ensure that the proper recipient had received those, and be able to, again, have a future record of where those payments went to. Sometimes that process isn't as efficient as perhaps they would like it to be. Double up payments and missed payments, and a number of things there that are sometimes fraught with getting that distributed out to the grower level.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, so when we take a look at the next step, there's a couple things that we're looking at. This is a program that we've put together here from an accelerator program. I wanted to have you think about a couple of things here in terms of really looking at your enterprise blockchain solution, figuring out what you want to do, and think about a couple of these best practices. When we put these together, one of the things that we wanted to do was have you really kind of have a roadmap of how you can get started. And what I would say is think about the scope of your project. Build some internal agreements on what your capabilities are. Understand what is possible today. Really try to figure out how you want to take your first step into a STRATO environment. And to do that, certainly we encourage to get, quote, everyone in the room, get the business folks in the room, the technical folks in the room, define what that, quick win would be. Certainly our advice is to start small with a very defined use case that would allow you to see benefit quickly, and then open up for some creative understanding of where we may be able to go in the long term. And then think about leveraging partners for some of the next phases. And that can be a BlockApps STRATO platform, running some track and trace work with some internal pieces, and then adding to it perhaps applications like a trace food that's in place. So with that, what we would like to do is say we have an opportunity to work with you to put together really an accelerator program. And the ability to get started with your own blockchain platform, being able to do some asset tracking, and being able to go out and get started. One of the things that was important to us when we put this together is to really offer a low-risk program that allows you to experience the benefits, right? Being able to drive some cost savings, being able to look at what that benefit can be for your organization, and to be able to do so within a fairly narrow timeline. And in this, I say, you can see those results within 90 days. And I think that's a piece that I really want to impart to this group of folks today, is that let's take a look at what those programs can look like. We know that there's some training. There's a little bit of infrastructure definition that has to be put in place to allow you to get started with a program. We know that we can look at some of the fast tracking for some of the beta information that you may have, really working with a pilot, and then being able to move forward with that. I think one of the things that I'd ask is, how do you want to build your business network, and how can STRATO help with that? And I think those are some things that if you think about doing those things, it'll help guide you in your decision-making process. When we architect an accelerator program, we're building your pilot program with production implementation in mind. And some of the deliverables or some of the clear benefits that you'll see is that you can really, drive blockchain technology, look at the cost savings for specific business applications. You can identify some quick and demonstratable ROI for your business, especially if you've got a very focused use case. Prove that out and then expand it to other parts of the organization. You'll have the opportunity to learn from and be guided by our expertise in technical and business applications. We have a great team that does a great deal of work with helping companies be successful early. And that's what we want to show with this program. And at the end, you get actual blockchain code, smart contracts, compliance with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance standards. And we do that without requiring any long-term obligations on your part. And certainly I would be happy to talk with you more about that and to be able to help you understand how we may be able to assist with your blockchain application. So, Sharat, I would ask if we have perhaps any questions at this point.
I have a couple of questions. So as far as the accelerator is concerned, is it open to all, like open to all geographies, or is it entirely US based?
No, so our accelerator program is open to all geographies. We would be eager to speak with you about your defined use case. There is a little bit of information exchange that we do early on, and that is a definition of the use case. It is a technical questionnaire that kind of helps us guide that, but we are not constrained by borders at this point, although perhaps I was a little focused on the North American market with my example. Those examples exist and can be deployed anywhere in the world.
Okay. So what are the use cases you're looking at? Are you looking at track and trace or identity or finance? If you can name some of the major focus areas.
Yeah, I think you've identified quite a few there. We have focuses here within our business where we've addressed good use cases in multiple vertical industries, agricultural for sure, but also in the healthcare marketplace where there is a high need for solid record keeping and, again, some of the same traceability requirements that are in place there. Finance for sure. The energy sector is also a very important use case that can be put in play here. So, the product itself is sometimes generic, but if the use case is well defined in terms of what we want to accomplish, which could be, I've got great control of my internal processes as a manufacturer or distributor, but the moment it moves away from my control and I've lost ownership, then I've lost visibility. And so in that instance, I'm going to say, boy, I'd really like to have all of the participants get together and work with this. So think about it expanding not only by vertical, but also multiple businesses within that same ecosystem.
Great. So would you also help the startups with the go-to-market strategy and all that help as part of the program?
Well, that one's a little bit of a different question. We can provide some general guidance there, but the go-to-market strategy is typically dependent upon what that company is already working to accomplish. So in some instances, if we are going to accelerate their application, what we can do best is take away some of that technical burden from them so that they're not worried about the day-to-day of the blockchain and we know that's operating smoothly, and free them up to go put their go-to-market together. At that point, we are kind of the back-end work, managing the network, that's ensuring their transactions are being run smoothly, and freeing them up, again, to go develop that marketplace.
Great. So, so is there any link which people can refer to for the accelerator? I think Caleb has pinged something on the chat window.
Yeah, that's excellent. Certainly, you can email me directly. It's at blockapps.net. I'm happy to field those. Likewise, you can go to the BlockApps website and look at our applications there. You can download information and, in fact, can even request really a 15-minute quick meeting with myself to help kind of flesh out what your use case can be. And I find that to be most valuable because when we get 10 to 15 minutes together and have direct dialogue back and forth, we then can lay out the outline of proceeding to go forward. And I think that's the important thing to get started with is, I've got an idea. I know the pain point in my business that I really want to solve. How can you help me? And if we can get that into that context whereby our accelerator program lets you define it, we go out, we spend some time, energy on our part to build that out for you and let you test drive that. That's the thing that we'd like to accomplish. And again, we wanted to make it easy, make it very attractive from both an overall commitment and a financial perspective to get you started. One of the things that I've seen in this marketplace is sometimes there's some hesitancy because unlike, other standard ERP systems for software, no one really argues that they need an ERP system. They spend most of their time trying to figure out which one. With the business around blockchain, sometimes the challenge is being able to get started and know how to do that. And so for me, what I really wanted to do was say, come talk to us. Let's put a program together. We'll put a 90-day pilot program together, accelerate your use case. And at the end of that period, you'll have the architecture of a solution that would let you go into production should you choose to carry that forward. And I think what you'll find is once you get there, you'll certainly want to continue on, build out the scope in more detail, perhaps invite more ecosystem partners to interact with you and be able to then show value and get started. And so for me, the most important thing is to get started and to learn as you go. And again, when we take our team of expert, seasoned developers and solution architects here, we can help you avoid lots of pitfalls and really get value creation for you in that first 90 days.
Great. Sid, at this point in time, I will pick one question from Leon. So Leon wants to know how STRATO fares as compared to other similar solutions in the market. What are some of the key points, or what's the USP of STRATO?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. One of the things that is probably good to understand is, we're really working with an Ethereum-based, permissioned blockchain network. One of the things that we offer as a differentiator is the fact that because we're managing this programmable business network, we can customize it to your use case, and we can leverage on work that has been done in the past to help you get to value creation sooner. And I know that seems like everybody would say that, and that's why we put the program together. We put the program together to really put the rubber to the road. We've got solid core blockchain as a service, solid foundation with a proven platform that has been in development since 2015. And so we're very comfortable in a mature platform that addresses those uses and those use cases. And we know that we can help you get there quicker. In some instances, there's a little bit of work around competing platforms, whether they're public or private, in terms of do you want to use different levels of technology to get your end result. We're very comfortable that we've delivered results and we can deliver results for you, and let us have an opportunity to do that discussion. And Leon, if you'd like to talk more, I'd be happy for that next 10 or 15 minute call.
Yeah, so with this, I will wrap this today's session. And thanks, Sid, for sharing your thoughts and perspective on track and trace. And I think the accelerator program is quite fascinating and quite attractive. And most startups will look forward to guidance from BlockApps. So thank you, everyone, for joining in, and have a great day.
Sharat, thank you. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate it and look forward to meeting you in the blockchain world. Thank you much.
Thank you.
I believe I've stopped recording here.
Hey Sid, yeah, I think we're good to wrap. You can hit the stop presentation button.